Hello, YouTubers! Welcome to Big Buddha is Watching. I'm Big Buddha, and today I'm going to be looking at the 1989 satirical horror movie Society. You're going to have to forgive me for this one because up until about 10 minutes ago, I really didn't know what I was going to review today. Normally, I have it fixed in my head what I'm going to review, but at the moment, I'm still trying to plug my way through Hannibal so I can get my Hannibal Lecter reviews done. So while I'm working my way through that, I'm just going back over some of my old notes and seeing if there was anything that I hadn't reviewed. Quite a bit I haven't reviewed actually that I've done notes on. So I've just picked something at random. This was something I watched a few weeks ago now. This might be an interesting one to do because usually when I review something, it's usually something that I've watched during the last 48 hours, so it's fresh in my mind. Here I'm going to be working on something old, well, not very old notes, but something from I think it was probably about 3 weeks ago, maybe more, that I watched the film. So this is going to be an interesting one. This was one of the films that I watched on Amazon. I got corralled into signing up to one of their channels, Shudder, which supposedly gave me some a wider variety of horror movies to watch. I did pay for a month for Shudder, and yet for some reason I can't access it, but I can still access the ones that are saved to my list. Yeah, just don't bother signing up to those channels on Amazon because they play silly buggers with you. I've cancelled the subscription to the channel now, but I'm still owed a month, but I can't access the channel. It's a bit shit if you ask me. But anyway, so as a result of only signing up for a month, I had a month where I ploughed through as many horror movies that I hadn't seen before, and this was a film that I was intrigued to watch. I sort of knew of it through reputation, and the cover, the poster art, does indeed look intriguing. It's kind of fleshy faces all melded together in a very 80s practical prosthetic sort of way, sort of Rob Bottin sort of way. But I really had no idea what the film was about. I kind of heard whispers here and there that it was something to see and behold, because there is some fairly out there elements to it, but I had no idea what the film was about thematically. And that is actually the best way to go into this film, because it is one of those ones where it's not actually revealed until the last 20 minutes what's going on. It's an urban paranoia movie, horror movie, but you're never quite sure what's going on. I made notes the night that I saw the film, and this is going to be interesting to go through. Go through 3-week old notes or a month old notes and see what I wrote and see what I can remember of the film. First thing I wrote was this is Rosemary's Baby for the Breakfast Club generation. It's. I think what I meant by that is that it's an 80s movie. And it's got a teen cast. The plot is basically you have the main character, whose name is it Billy Warlock? No, Billy Warlock's the actor. Bill Whitney. So he's a middle class American kid, sort of upper middle class, and he lives in a sort of Beverly Hills 90210 type society, and his parents, his family, and his peers all on the surface seem normal, but he slowly starts to suspect that there's something there's something up, and the film basically charts his investigation and the eventual revelations that the society that he lives in isn't everything that it seems. The film is a very it's very satirical and it has a very tongue-in-cheek edge to it. It's not meant to be taken entirely seriously, and I think that's really the best way to go into watching this film. This isn't serious horror. This is more in the comedy horror vein. The film was directed by Brian Yuzna, who this was his directorial debut. Up until that point, he was known primarily more as a producer of horror movies, most famously for the H.P. Lovecraft adaptation of Reanimator and From Beyond, both directed by Stuart Gordon. He decided he wanted to launch his directorial career because he was having trouble finding funding as a producer. So he got a two-picture deal because he had the rights to the Reanimator franchise, and the deal was that if he got to direct an original horror movie, then he could, off the back of that, go into directing a sequel to Reanimator, which is what he did in 1989 and 1990. I have to say that this film, having watched Bride of Reanimator recently as well, I think this was the better film. It felt more assured of itself. The film didn't actually get to release in the United States. It did well a little. It was released in the UK and in Europe, and it kind of garnered. It didn't do massive business, but it garnered some critical plaudits and slowly gained a bit of a cult following. But I think the satirical elements of the film sort of hampered any mainstream success that it would have had. This feels more in the vein of, although it looks, like a mainstream horror movie. Really, it's an art house movie in disguise, and I think that's what hampered any chance of it doing well in the United States. Really. But why was I? So I've lost my train of thought now. Where was I going with that? So yeah. So structurally, it kind of reminded me of Rosemary's Baby, where in Rosemary's Baby, the revelation that it's devil worshippers isn't really revealed to the end. Here, you don't really find out who the people in this society really are and what they want and what they're doing there until the end. And and when you do, it's. I mean, the reputation that this film has for being one of the sickest films ever made, it really, it's not that bad until the final 20 minutes, and then when the final 20 minutes happens, yeah, okay, I can see, especially to a 1989 audience, where the reputation for that might have come from. Yeah, next note. Europeans apparently more open to the movie's themes than the Americans are. I don't think America is very interested in satirizing itself in a way. Some of the greatest works of satire, funnily enough, I've seen over the past few years on the American way of life. If you're going to find it anywhere, it's actually in the Grand Theft Auto games, if you ask me, which I think are they have a reputation of being sort of exploitative computer games, and but there's great satire sort of smuggled into those games in a way, and those games could have only been made by Brits, Rockstar, a British computer game, because I don't think Americans could really can really look at themselves and stick the knife in as deep as that. Yuzna, I think I'm right in saying he isn't American himself. Although, am I wrong about that? Yes, he's from the Philippines. Oh no, he was born in the Philippines, but doesn't look. Oh, and grew up in Nicaragua. So there you go. This film is made by an outsider looking in, and I guess that's where some of the more paranoid elements of the film come from, because it feels like an outsider's point of view, an outsider who doesn't feel he truly belongs in the society that he's found himself in. Billy Warlock is a Baywatch star. Yeah, he was. He was a Baywatch star. I think the reason I might have written that is that's kind of the level of performance you get in this film. Don't go into this looking for award-worthy acting performances. It's not that kind of film. Has reputation for being one of the sickest movies ever made. Really, it's the only in the final 20 minutes. But I've said that already. This film could have only been made in 1989. Any other year, it would have looked totally different. Yeah, this film is totally 1989 through and through. It's a real end of the era. It's not quite the Breakfast Club look. It's not 1985. In 1985, the kind of preppy look of the characters, the mullets on the guys, that would have been new and contemporary. By now, it's 1989. It's its own distinct look. It's really the last gasp of the 80s, and you can kind of feel the need for the 1990 to come along and kill off the 80s and the garish fashion. You often find that in the end of a decade, that you see a sort of last garish dying breath of a decade's aesthetic. 1979 is no exception. 1969 is maybe that's the exception of the rule. I kind of think of 1969 as being what the 60s looked like. This feels like very much like an end of a decade movie. Kind of similar to They Live in themes and message. Amazingly, They Lived the more subdued film. There you go. If you've seen John Carpenter's They Live, great film. Again, like this film and a film like RoboCop, it's on the surface it presents itself as a genre movie, but there is great satire smuggled in there for you, and a kind of if you've seen that They Live, then thematically you're on similar territory. I think that might be spoiling it for anyone who's seen They Live. But there you go. Film satire very on the nose in places. Explains the joke too often. Butthead. Yeah. That's the only. Thinking back now, that's the only joke in the film that I can really recall. I think what I'm referring to there is there's a bit in the film. All right, I'll go into spoilers because what the hell. So in the final 20 minutes, it turns out that the society that I've forgotten the character's name again, not Billy. Well, the character that Billy Warlock plays is living in a society that's made up of aliens, and they're shape-shifting aliens. He's the only human amongst them. It's not. Funny enough, there's not much of an explanation about why he's human, but his parents are aliens. You know where he came from and what his real who his real parents were. So I guess you're meant to assume that he was kidnapped at birth, but they're shape shifting aliens, and like I say, it's 1989, so it's all prosthetics and lots of KY jelly. You know, it's very very slimy and icky, but very very funny at the end. But there is a point halfway through the film where I'm just going to call him Billy because what's he called? That's why I'm confused. He's called Bill Whitney and he's played by Billy Warlock. So Bill calls his dad a butthead halfway through the film, and then at the end, his dad turns into just like a walking pair of legs, but where his asshole should be is his face. And I saw that and I thought, oh, that's very, very funny because he called him Butthead earlier on, a nice callback. But then, I can't remember if it's the dad or he said, I think it's the dad says, well, you did say I was a butthead. It's like, no, you didn't need the line, I got it. So I cite that as being representative of one of the problems is that the film tends to over-explain the jokes sometimes, and you don't need it. It could have reined the satire could have been more subliminal. You didn't need to hit the nail on the head so often, and that's just a personal preference, but it was a little on the nose for me. People bemoan soulless CGI, but bad puppetry can look just as fake. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, if this film was made now, obviously there would be a lot of CGI, there would be a lot of morphing effects, and people would say, oh, the original looked much more realistic. And the truth of the matter is, puppetry and latex effects, it also looks fake. The effects in The Thing, they look fantastic. They look really there, but I don't believe that it's really people's heads ripping apart in The Thing, or their stomachs ripping open. I still know I'm looking at something that's been manufactured. I know it's an optical trick, the same way that you watch CGI. So I guess that's what I'm saying here. The puppetry in this was done by Screaming Mad George, who I guess after Tom Savini was the second go-to guy when it came to 80s creature effects. And some of it looks good, but some of it does look a little hokey now, especially the butthead puppet. Odd little moments don't ring true throughout. Yeah, I mean that's just a bugbear with a lot of films. On the whole, I did like this film just because it is so over the top, and I respect something that attempts to be more than the genre that it is. This attempts to be more than just a standard horror movie, a standard gross out movie. There is it attempts to be funny, and it attempts to be satirical, and it attempts to be over the top and tongue in cheek, and I admire something that at least attempts to make you look at the screen and look at it in disbelief, because at least you're gauging on some sort of reaction level than just giving some sort of homogenous, generic tropes in a film. So I admire it for that. It's just a shame that there are a few moments here and there that sort of clunk and smack of from being a first time director, unfortunately. So I admire its ambition, but Yuzna at this time was probably not the most technically gifted when it came to working behind the camera. But you know, obviously he had produced a few noteworthy horror movies at this point in his career. Final note, definitely silly. I always do a summing up one at the end. Definitely silly, but doesn't hold back. So I said, so I admire it for that. Fascinatingly OTT. There you go, folks. So there's my thoughts on Society. Fascinating. That's the only way I can describe it. I guess a real Marmite movie. You know, it's not going to be for everyone's tastes. You know, I'm sure there are people out there. There are people out there who hate the film, and if you do, I can totally understand why. But at the same time, there are people that really dig it. You know, I think it's one of those ones where you have to go, okay, am I going to go with this or not? And usually in those sort of situations, when a film asks me to go along with it, I go, okay, what the hell, you know, and had a good time watching it. It's dated. It's definitely dated. But Yuzna swung for the fences with this one, and it shouldn't have been maligned in the way it was in the States. You know, not getting a release for 3 years. More people should know about this film. So that's all I'm going to say, folks. That's Society. If you're at all intrigued by what I've said, go check it out. And until next time, this is me, Big Buddha, signing off, and I shall see you all out there in YouTube land.